Hey, everybody, that was fast. Let me get this crud off my screen. I don't even know what that is. I wonder if it's res. Looks like res. Don't know how I got res on my screen. Let me get my chat set up and we will get started. Ark Knight, hello, and hello to all you out there lurking. Ark, I'm glad you're here because I want to show you this while I'm thinking about it, looking at it. I just put the shrimp trap in there a few minutes ago, and that's actually not many shrimp compared to what was on it right before we went live. It was crawling with shrimp. So I don't know if a lot of them have made their way inside, but it's only been in there for like 5 minutes, and it's just crawling with shrimp already. This tank is so overgrown. I got the light turned on tonight. I normally don't have the light turned on. I just let it get ambient light from the, the pond light. So we got a little bit of a look in there, even though it's got the shrimp trap in there at the moment. And you can see them just swimming all over the place. This tank is just packed with shrimp. Let's look at the side and the back. So yeah, we can definitely thin out the old shrimp population in here. So we'll get the pond fed. We've got to do a little bit of work to the pond. Before we get started, I've got my nitrate reactor up and running. So this is the outflow, and that's maximum full crank. So we'll have to turn it down much slower than that eventually, but I got to let it run full crank for a few days. But I did not seal this end cap here so that I can get in there. I've got calcium carbonate in this end to remineralize the water before it goes back into the tank. And it looks, actually, you know what? Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of moisture leaking out of right here. So it looks like I'm going to have to seal this damn thing. And I really don't want to, because once I seal it, it's permanent. The way PVC cement works is it's not glue. It welds it together. It becomes one piece. So I'll just have to destroy it at some point. So this end has the main cap welded in place, so it can't leak around this. But this piece still comes in and out. And I've got it sealed with silicone, but I'm still getting water weeping out around it. And so I'm debating whether or not we're going to try to reseal that with silicone. I think we're going to try to reseal it with silicone first. And we're going to glop it on there and really glop the silicone on there. And then we're also going to try to pull this end piece off. I might have to get my big plumber's wrench out to get this piece off. It's really wedged in there tight, even though it's not glued in. And then maybe we'll try to reseal that with silicone too. But until this thing's 100% leak proof, I'm not going to leave it running overnight because I'm afraid, I'll come down in the morning and the pond will be half empty. But again, that's maximum flow coming out of there. I can't make it go any faster than that. That's full crank on the pump. And again, we're going to have to turn that way down. And I've also found that when I do turn it down using the valve here, as soon as I turn it really slow, it puts back pressure in the system, and then my leaking gets even worse. It really starts leaking a lot once I get some back pressure on there. So we're probably going to have to just put the damn PVC cement on it and just permanently seal it. And, in a couple of years, I'll have to just cut the top of it off, and I won't have to destroy it, but I'll have to cut the top of it off, shorten it, and then put a neck on it and then extend it and then put it back together. So it won't be a complete waste, but that is $95 worth of hang on, I got to lower you down before I move you over there. That's $95 worth of PVC, plus some other odds and ends that I had to pay for, the gravel and the calcium carbonate and the silicone and the spray paint, the PVC cement. So all told, I've got about $125 into that reactor, and hopefully it'll pay off and it'll actually work for us. If you missed it the other night, I opened up the waterfall area so you can really actually see the piece of woodwork and the water flowing through there. I've cleared a bunch of the mud out so you can see the water flowing down along the sides. Ultimately, I think that's looking really good right now. So, all right, on with the motley. Let's get the fishies fed because they have been waiting. I still have not seen the Siamese algae eater since I've put it in this tank. It's not on the floor anywhere, so that's, a good sign, but I also haven't seen it in the tank anywhere either, so I don't know, maybe that's not such a good sign. All right. If you watch the grass as the fish swim in and out of it, you'll see the grass rustling because they get in between the fronds or whatever they are, stalks, I guess, and they knock the grass around with their bodies. That one koi right there in front of you now, he's just getting so big. Thing's a beast. I'm really going to have to get a pond set up outside so that I have a place to put this when it finally gets big enough to, have to move out of this pond. I think I've got a while yet. I can probably let him get considerably bigger, but eventually he's going to outgrow this pond because koi get pretty damn big over time. Brendan, how are you? All right, well, looks like I don't have any comments to get caught up on. Let me start puffing on my bow here. And then I guess we'll get on with, once we get everybody fed, I'll go ahead and start pulling the thing apart, and we'll glop it up with silicone and then let it sit for a while and then fire it back up and see if it leaks. And again, I'm not going to leave it overnight. I honestly, you know what? We're just going to seal it with the fucking cement and be done with it. I'm not going to be able to sleep knowing, if I go to bed tonight, just wondering if I come down in the morning, am I going to find water all over the floor? So we're just going to seal it and it'll be done. And it should be a couple years before I have to worry about opening it up again. It'll make it a little more challenging to do any maintenance or clean it if I ever need to, backwash it or something. I guess I still could just, pour it out through the ends and shake it around, mix it around and flush some water through it. That'll, break up any crud that might be clogging it up or something. Who knows? I just don't like the idea of just like making a sealed unit where like, that's it. It's put together. Like you can't, you just can't access this anymore, no matter what. I suppose there's ways I could have done it. I could have bought threaded pieces. That would have made sense. I didn't even think about that. I could have just screwed the cap on, put some Teflon tape on it and then screwed it on. That would have sealed it. Oh, well, too late now. This is just a prototype first run, and we're going to see if we can make it work. So we'll find out. And that is white confetti that we're smoking tonight. It's good to hear, Brenda. Did I call you Brandon a minute ago? I feel like I called you Brandon because that's what I saw when I glanced at your name. So, hello, Brenda. I am sorry for calling you Brandon if I did. How to stop goldfish from eating the roots of the plants? I do not know. I had somebody ask me the other night, what are the best plants for goldfish? And I wish I had thought of this, but a friend of mine answered for me, saying the best plants for goldfish are plastic plants. Even these plants are going to get knocked around. I've got them in a great big planter full of gravel with rocks piled on top of it, and that should keep it in place. But any kind of roots, like they just get destroyed by the goldfish. You see how big the peace lily is over there in the corner, this big leafy plant. That goes down into like a 2-inch PVC pipe where the main rhizome is, and then the roots used to come out the bottom. and now it's just like a stump. I honestly don't know how the thing's still alive because it doesn't have any roots attached to it. The pothos plant gets chewed up around the edges. I've never found a plant that the goldfish won't eat. They eat my pothos plant, they eat my nubius, they eat java fern. Goldfish will eat any plant, and roots, are certainly part of that. So I don't know what to tell you about it. You could put a barrier around them in some way. If you've got a plant and you want to see the bare exposed roots, you can put the plant in a planter or something where the roots would grow out of it, but then you'd have to have a larger sort of screened area around that would allow the roots to grow into the water, but prevent the goldfish from getting it. Because if the goldfish can get anywhere near it, they're going to eat the roots. And that's just about all there is to it. Sound like Forrest Gump now. All right, let me do another hit, and then we'll go ahead and get that thing pulled apart and glue that together for the night and be done with it. We can talk about it later. So, got it unplugged now. So we'll let some water drain out of it. Let me tip it up a little bit. We'll let it backflow and just get some water out of the top part of the system. Yeah, that's not really in there considering I sealed it with silicone. I'm just pulling it right out. Yeah, that's definitely not. Well, I'll have to get the silicone out of the inside of the opening before I try to put the cement in there. So let's have a look at the fancy goldfish for a few minutes. We'll get them fed. And then we'll go tinker with that. Not sure how to get the silicone off that PVC. I don't know if acetone will get it out or not. I don't know. Maybe I'll just get in there with a dry paper towel and see if I can't just rub it out. Judge Lou. Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do when it comes to plants and goldfish. You can see I've got fancy goldfish in here, but if you look at this is a nubius, which is like linoleum. It's one of the toughest plants you can get. And this has chew marks and teeth all around it. The only way I've prevented, I thought you meant you wanted to actually see the roots in the water. I'm trying to get the roots to go through this, and you can see how stubby they are because these guys go up there and they munch these roots off. So with these, I've buried them in gravel. And under those rocks, more than likely, is some stones. You can see down here, I've got some big rocks piled around the base of it. That's one of the things I do. The goldfish won't dig necessarily, but what they'll do is they'll grab the leaves and tug at it. And so if it's not really firmly rooted or held down, they'll just pull it up out of the gravel. Because I don't have any like aqua soil or anything in here. It's just loose gravel. And so all of the plants that are in here are held down at the base with some kind of, I put, several flat rocks all the way around with just sort of a hole in the middle with the plant growing out of it. And that way they can't really do much to it. They will still chew on it, but these are fancy goldfish, not koi and not like just common goldfish. Those are the worst. These guys aren't too bad. And you can see I got some Anubias and Java. This is the Java, and then this is all different species of Anubias growing in there. So it is doable with some goldfish, but if you've got koi or standard, goldfish, comet goldfish, they're brutal on plants. If you're having issues with like excess bioload, you could always put a sponge filter with an air stone on it. That's a great way to process extra ammonia. You could, depending on what kind of filter you have on there, they make different chemical absorbents, which will, you know, like there's probably something called ammonia zorb or something like that that you could look into getting. Put a little package of that in your filter. That would probably pull the ammonia out of the water, or at least alter it enough that it wouldn't be harmful. Not really sure how the ammonia zorb would work, or even if there is such a thing, but I suspect there probably is. Not sure what a leca ball is, but that sounds like a good idea. You know, if you can physically protect the roots in some way by covering them up, and again, if you're not worried about seeing the roots, you can just put the plants in a planter. Um, if you look again, I don't know if you've seen the video of me. I do have a video of me planting that, but that's one of the planters I use for my weed, my marijuana. And it's like a 2-gallon soft side planter. It's made out of like a non-woven squishy material. And so that's filled with my homemade potting mix, which consists of about 80% peat sphagnum and about 20% composted manure. And I filled it almost to the top. I put a layer of gravel over the soil to hold the soil down. And then I put rocks over the gravel to hold the whole thing down. And I got my papyrus grass growing out of basically manure and sphagnum, you know, Miracle Grow style, you know, basic, what's the word I'm looking for? Potting mix. That's the word I'm looking for. Miracle Grow potting mix is probably about 10% manure and, you know, maybe 90% sphagnum and wood chips and all that kind of stuff. Miracle Grow's garbage. If you go through a lot of potting mix, you should make it yourself. It's really easy and it's a lot cheaper. But yeah, you can do that. You can put plants in planters and then put them in your tank. Something like a terracotta pot, depending on what your scape looks like. You know, you could go with just a black plastic planter that's, you know, nondescript and put it in the back where you don't really notice it. Your imagination is your only barrier. TK, hello. Either that, Arc, or put a predatory fish in the tank. That would be the trick too. Oh no. Yep, this is coming out of the tank. Never even thought about that. It's such a cool decoration. I know it's a pelvis, but I still like looking at it like that because it looks like an awesome fucking skull mask with horns on the top. But alas, just saw the goldfish get stuck in one of the foramen here. So we're not going to put that in the tank anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do with the pelvis. I guess I'll put it out in the garden. The squirrels will chew on it and chipmunks will chew on it. It's a good source of calcium and helps them wear their teeth down. We had a cow skull out there for years, but I think it's gone finally. Yeah, I mean, years. I got it when I worked for the garbage company. Somebody throwing away a whole cow skull, horns and all. So I brought it home and we put it in the garden. And just over the years, it's gotten smaller and smaller as the rodents have chewed on it. And so I'll throw that out there. So, all right, let's get over here. I know we're moving right along tonight, but that's fine. I want to get this done. I've been tinkering with this stupid nitrate reactor for so long. Now I want to be finished with it. So let me go turn my app on and I'll zoom in so you can actually see what I'm doing. Gotta come in the other room and get my phone first. Get my phone turned on. Well, I'll get my app turned on anyway. Opened, whatever you say. Whatever the kids are saying these days. All right, that is what I need to clean out. I got silicone down on the inside of it, and I've got silicone all over the outside of the male end as well. So this end has the pump attached to it, but this has silicone all over it. Oh, it's not even fully cured yet. I should have let it cure completely before I started running water through it. I let it sit all day. I figured it would have been cured by now. It's been on there since this morning. I didn't start it up till about an hour before we went live. So that could have had something to do with it. If I'd have let it completely cure, it might have sealed it. So now that I'm thinking about it, let's try it with the silicone again, but we'll let it sit a couple of days before I start it up again. Maybe we'll try it Sunday night or something, because that was still like goopy and sticky. All right, where did I put the silicone? All right, I'll be back in half a second. God damn it, where did I put that silicone? I know I just set it down somewhere stupid because I just used it. All right, God damn it. Well, I see the cement, but I don't want to use the cement. I want to use the silicone. God damn it. All right, let me check one more place. I know you guys are just staring at a little pipe, but let me find this and we can work on that little pipe. All I got to do is find the damn... God damn it. I wish my brain funked. There it is. Why the fuck did I put it over here? Do not know, but I put it over there. All right, this is still not going to get the other side sealed. I wonder if I could just scoop it around the outside of it and if that would seal it. All right, so this is just regular old GE silicone. This is, I don't even know if it's, yeah, this is number one. I don't know if the common belief in the hobby is that you're supposed to use the number one or the number two or whatever, but the reality is it doesn't matter. You can use whichever one you want. One of them, let me see if it's this one. I think, yeah, this is the number one, and the byproduct that is produced when this cures is ammonia. And so as long as you let it cure, it's not going to do anything to the fish tank. But it's, if you're working on with it indoors and you're working with a lot of it, as I've done in the past, the ammonia gets a bit overwhelming. All right, we're going to just let that sit for a couple of days and see what happens. Now, let me see if with the camera zoomed in, I can get you positioned properly. You can't really see what I'm doing here, but to be fair, neither can I. So let's try drying that off first. I've got paper towels around here somewhere. All right, hopefully I can just seal around the top where this goes in. I wonder if I can actually pull this out. Gee, nope. I didn't think so. I put the other one in the same way. I just jammed it in. I mean, it's in there as hard as I could shove it in, but it's not glued in. And I did that to the other end, but the other end was leaking too. And when I took it apart, I had to get one of those big adjustable plumber's wrench, and I had to like grind the thing up and yank and wiggle, and I finally got it out. But that's the pressure end where the water's coming in. This is the outflow end, and I didn't really think there was much in the way of pressure pushing on it, so I really didn't think I'd get a leak. And here I am it's not much of a leak. It's just water sort of beating up around the lip. So maybe if we just glop it full of silicone, it will prevent it from weeping out of there. And worst case scenario, if we let it sit for a few days until it's fully cured and we start it back up and I find out it's weeping again, I can go, full nuclear and we can just weld the thing together, and then it'll be just one solid pipe from one end to the other, and it won't possibly be able to leak in any way at all. I won't be able to get into it again or ever do any maintenance to it, but it won't leak. Hopefully, if we get enough silicone gooped on here and really actually let it cure properly, we won't leak anymore anyway. This end was leaking so little, I could have practically just kind of put a paper towel on it and once a day changed out the damp paper towel and put a fresh one on there, and that would have prevented any water from actually dripping or anything. So with that little tiny bit of leak, that was also without any back pressure. So I don't know what's going to happen once we get some back pressure on this, because after it's been running for a while, I'm going to turn the flow way down and only let a few drops at a time come out of there. And at that point, even if I turn the pump all the way down, it's still probably going to have some back pressure pushing on it. But there you go. We're all sealed up. So let's see how that goes. Next, we're going to do a quick vac in the silver dollar tank. And put my silicone somewhere where I'm not going to be able to find it when I want it again. Get you zoomed out. We will get this light turned off. And then we'll come down here. All right, so before we get these guys fed, I want to get in there and get that vac'd out real quick. So running the tanks without filters definitely requires more frequent maintenance, but less overall maintenance, I would say. It's really a lot easier just to do these little quick vacs from time to time. I'm still clogged up even though I drilled the end of this thing out. Let's see how much stuff we can pull up through there. Yeah, we're not getting very much suction at all, and I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck is wrong. I hate this stupid. Let me let it drain, and I'm going to blow through the back end and see if I can't get out whatever's stuck in there, because something's clearly stuck in there. Oh, I think it's the old valve piece. Yeah, that ain't going to fucking do it. Oh, God damn it. All right, you know what? We're not doing this now. Oh, fuck that stupid thing later. That thing pisses me off. I've been messing with that stupid valve that lets the water out. It's designed to prevent fish from accidentally getting sucked up in it. And it's like a clog device. It's designed to be a vac to suck stuff out of the tank, but it also has a thing in it that almost deliberately catches stuff that you're trying to suck out of the tank. It's like putting a screen in front of the outlet. I just want the water to flow through it. I cut the end of it off. I drilled out the inside of it. Let me see if I can get this apart. I usually have to hammer it apart. There we go. So I've even drilled out the inside there, but there's a valve. It's just like a one-way valve that the water can go one way but not the other. And so if you just pump this into the tank, as the water gets pushed up, it sits there, and then you push more in, and it sits there, and you push more in, and eventually you can just start the siphon by doing it that way. But there's a stupid flappy valve in there. So after I cut the end off, it used to have a screen and the flappy valve. So I drilled it out, and now the water is still just not going out through there, and I don't really know why. But we can pull that off and see if there's a hole straight through there or not. You know what? I'm going to get my drill out, and there's about to be a hole straight through there. Oh, it just blew some shit out the other end. I wonder what that was. Maybe that's what was getting stuck. All right, let's try this again. Whatever I blew out came flying out the other end like a shotgun blast. And so maybe we'll get some actual suction this time. Oh, yeah. Perfect. So I definitely like the filterless part of it. Look in there now. Look how beautiful and clean. It's this little gap right here. I have a power head in the back pushing water this way, and so I get this little eddy right here, and all the detritus and stuff just sort of collects and catches there. And once every few days, I just go in and do what you just saw me do, and boom, it pulls all the stuff out of the tank. And ultimately, if I do that a couple times a week, it keeps the tank cleaner than when I was just running a canister filter on it and changing out the canister filter, once a year or whatever the fuck I did. So the tank's actually better looking now that I don't have a filter on it. I still have biological filtration, of course, but I shut the canister filter off. We don't have any kind of mechanical filtration on it. Of course, now everybody's all scared and freaked out. They're not going to come out and eat. All right, I'll give that a few minutes. And we'll see if they don't come out and eat. If they're going to stay hidden, we'll just move on to the next tank because I don't see any point in staring at what appears to be an empty tank. Let's see. Don't look like I'm missing any comments or any new people showing up. So hello to all the new lurkers out there saying hello. We're not saying hello. Hey, there's my shark making a little slight appearance briefly for a moment. Oh, and there he goes again. All right, we'll just do a hit and then we'll move on to the next tank because everybody's already waiting to be fed. Mr. Natural. I was hoping Steve would be here tonight. I had an exciting day out on the kayak. Me and Kane went out kayaking today. Had a good time. Found some really cool driftwood for his tank, too. He took some really nice pieces home. Found a couple pieces that were just a little too big. He kind of measured them out, and they just probably weren't going to cut it. We found a few that were good, but considering how much we found, it was almost didn't make the cut. But all in all, it was a really good day. We had a lot of fun. All right, well, there's a little look at Mr. Fabulous for a moment. All right, I think the next thing we're going to do is take the shrimp trap and see what's in that. We're going to dump that into the Great Wizard's tank. And just to see how many shrimp we get, we'll get back to the feeding of the Great Wizard after, we make our rounds. But I do want to empty that shrimp tank. That shrimp trap. It's been in there for about 40 minutes now. I put it in maybe 5 minutes before I went live, and it had shrimp crawling all over the front of it. And now I can still see a few, but, well, maybe there are a little more than that. But I would imagine by now quite a few of them have gotten inside of it. I swear they look like little silvery piranhas. I know they're related to them, and we always talk about them as looking like and being related to piranhas, but they really do look like little piranhas when you look at them up close. Mr. Fabulous is a pearl cichlid. He's a type of geo. I don't know what he actually is, what species of geo he is, but I measured him the other day as best I could, and he's sitting right around 10 inches now. So me and Steve were debating the other day as to whether the Pleco or Mr. Fabulous here was the bigger fish, ounce for ounce. If you actually put them both on scales, which one is more fish? And my money's on Mr. Fabulous. The Pleco is really big and fat on the front end. He's got a lot of head, but then he sort of tapers. He's like teardrop shaped. Let's see if we can see him. Where are you, Pleco? I don't think we can see him. So there's his tail a little bit. So he's a little over a foot long, but see how he's really teardrop shaped? His head's really thick and wide, but he tapers. If you look at Mr. Fabulous, he's thick all the way down to the caudal peduncle, the muscle in front of his tail fin. He's just solid, and he's about 5 inches tall, and he's 10 inches long. He's an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches thick in the middle. I bet if you put them both on a scale and weighed them, I bet Mr. Fabulous would actually be the one that weighed more. I love watching them chew on the algae wafers with them sticking out of their mouths. I like how he keeps creeping into the edge of the camera, picking something up and then creeping back out into his little hiding spot. Oh, here he comes again. So he really is a gorgeous fish. Yeah, I don't know how big this Pleco is going to get. Excuse me. According to the package at PetSmart where I bought him, it said 14 inches, I want to say. Maybe 15 inches was total size. And he's over 12 now, but he's probably 7 years old at this point, maybe 8 years old, I think. What did I say this tank is? This tank's going to be 10 years old this year. Yeah, this tank's going to be 10 years old this year. So that Pleco is probably at least 9, maybe a little older than 9. God damn, my fish get so old without me realizing it. They grow up so fast. I was thinking about that the other day. If you'll notice, there's a angelfish in this tank, and it's a really plain looking sort of. It's not a bad looking angelfish because again, they don't make the other kind. They're all good looking. But it's really not anything super spectacular. It's basically just a marble angelfish. You can see back there, right here. So again, nothing spectacular, just a marble angelfish, very pretty. But that's the fish. If you're familiar with my channel and you're a regular viewer, you will know that I have a policy when it comes to angelfish, and that is I don't get angelfish that I think are pretty, because again, they don't make the other kind. I get angelfish that are just showstoppers to me. Other people might think they're great, but maybe not a showstopper. But I've got to see an angelfish and just say, wow, I'll figure out what I'm going to do with that, but I have to take that fish home. It's got to be that level of awesome for me to do that. And the reason is that angelfish we just looked at. Early on in my fish keeping hobby, I was not that good at it, as most of us aren't when we first get into the hobby. And so fish didn't really particularly live a full lifespan. And I also took fish back to the store and traded them in, or I would start a new tank, and so I was able to buy fish a little more freely because I turned them over a little more rapidly. Now that I'm a fish keeper extraordinaire, I buy an angelfish. That angelfish is taking up space in the tank for a decade or more. And, I don't always want to just be looking at a plain angelfish for the next 15 years, waiting for it to die so I can get a good looking angel, or an exciting angelfish. So I don't get the other kind anymore. I did recently take a rescue angelfish, which again is basically just a wild type. It's a lovely angelfish, but there's nothing special about it. Now, in this case, it's already 10 years old, so we might get another 5 years or something out of it. Who knows? We might get another 10 out of it. But I'm I don't have room for any more fish, and I don't have room for any more angelfish. As much as I'd like to have some in there, I just don't. So that's why I've got that policy now, because of that last angelfish I bought, that after buying it, I thought, and now, here we are 8-9 years later, I'm still looking at that same angelfish. It's just kind of in the tank. Nobody ever comments about it. And if they do, they're like, oh, I didn't know you had an angelfish in this tank. Yeah, it just blends in. Nobody even notices it. So that's not the kind of angelfish I want. I've never had the green severums. Or severums of any color. I've always wanted to try the severums. I've always wanted to try convicts. And even though I don't really have the tank set up for it, I've always kind of wanted an Oscar. I think Oscars are neat fish. And if you're getting a tiger Oscar, they're just absolutely gorgeous. So that's my most recently purchased angelfish, and that is a panda angel. And believe it or not, I got it at PetSmart for $8.99, $7.99. If you go to PetSmart, you'll see that they have assorted angelfish, and if you're patient, you can find, or even the pandas. They do sell slightly fancier ones. They sell kois there now. But even if you just look in their assorted tank, if you're patient and you keep coming back week after week and looking at their new stock, because they really crank through angelfish, they can go through 20 a week. You'll find that angelfish that to you is just outstanding, even though it's just a quote assorted, mixed angelfish or whatever they say on the tank. But you'll find they come in two sizes. One's the $4.99 one, and it's about the size of a quarter. Or then you can get the $8.99 one that's like the size of a silver dollar. Don't fall for the silver dollar size one unless that's the one you see that you simply have to take home. Then spending the extra $4 or something is probably worth it. But the small ones that you buy, if you bring them home and put them in your tank, in about 6 weeks, they'll be the size of the big ones. It's not like it takes a long time for them to get to the $half size. In your first year, it's going to be almost, it's going to be 85% of full grown first 12 or 13 months of life. So don't worry about buying the smaller one. And to me, watching them grow up and getting the smaller ones and watching them mature in the tank is part of the fun anyway. So I usually opt for the younger, and smaller fish if I've got the option. That angelfish has looked like that for years. I think it's just a female, but I worried about that at first too. But again, she's looked like that for a very long time, so I don't really concern myself too much with it anymore. And it looks like there's a tiny little, real teeny tiny little rainbow fish swimming around at the top of the tank. That's just the reflection off of my other 125. I love those white eyes with the black dot in the middle. I think they're awesome looking. I definitely don't have a, I only buy this kind of angelfish criteria. There's all kinds of angelfish out there that I like. In fact, when I go to the good fish store, I hate walking down their aisle where they keep all their angelfish because there's so many different kinds now that I think are just amazing. And, I can only bring so many home. So there's the angelfish I was just talking about, the one I just rescued recently. Again, it's a pretty angelfish. And if you see it in the right light and it's feeling happy, there's tons of blue coloration in the dorsal fin. So it is a really attractive angelfish. But, there's nothing particularly special about it. I know the guy that gave it to me, thought it was the best angelfish in the world, but that's just sentimental value. I'm not, I don't have the sentimental value. I'm just looking at it de facto is what it looks like. And to me, it just looks like a common, wild type. Notice I say wild type because it looks like a wild angelfish. It's obviously not. It's been, they've been captive bred for so many generations now. It's uncountable. But they're called wild type. And I just think of them as your basic standard boilerplate. If you buy the super duper base model angelfish, that's the one you get is the wild type. But I like the double darks. I've got a lace zebra, which you'll never ever begin to appreciate how amazing it looks on camera. You have to see it in person and you have to really look at it before you begin to realize, like, oh my God, there's so much going on in this angelfish. The markings and the patterning, the subtlety of the coloration. It's stunning. It was a gift from a viewer. Along with those bright orange discus I got. He also gave me this angelfish that's just fucking gorgeous. But on camera, it just looks almost like a wild type. It doesn't quite look like a wild type, but it looks pretty similar. But it's absolutely amazing if you see it in person. And yes, I know there's growths on the discus. Those I think are just tumors. There's nothing I can really do about it. They don't seem to be getting worse. So I'm just kind of watching and waiting and seeing what happens. All right, everybody, don't forget, I am here to answer your questions, whether it's questions about my fish or my fish room or questions you have about stuff you've got going on in your tanks. So I'll stand here and do my best to fill the dead air, but if you got questions or whatever, by all means, that's why I'm here. Yeah, that shark is definitely staked out his territory around there, Shamu. Well, emycin is an antibiotic, and so that's only going to really have any impact on a bacterial infection, and I I don't think that's a bacterial infection. I don't see how it could be. I suppose it could be, but to me, it just looks like a tumor. Um, I've had a lot of fish develop tumors over the years, and sometimes they live for a long time with the tumor, and sometimes they just get sicker and sicker, and don't live very long. So I don't know. I've had that discus for 4 or 5 years now. I guess at least 4, maybe 5 years. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like I'm down to one diamond tetra. I'm definitely going to need to restock because I'm certainly not going to get any breeding tetras out of there with only one of them left. So I got a good run out of that batch, though. I think I bought I don't remember. It was either 5 or 7. I always buy odd numbers when I buy schools of fish. Don't ask me why. I just do. I think it looks more natural than a even number. I don't like seeing 3 pairs swim around. So I'll either do 5 or I'll do 7. So I started with one of those numbers and they bred. And because of the dense planting in the tank, several of them survived and then more bred and some died off. And I just had this sort of self-replenishing population of diamond tetras in there for years. And I don't anymore. And it's possibly because I put that discus in the tank, and maybe the discus is predatory enough that it's finding all the babies and I'm not getting any babies. Because I've seen the Buenos Aires in there breeding too, but I've never seen any baby Buenos Aires except for that one time we saw a few of them. So it's probably because I now have an angelfish and a discus in that tank. The fry don't stand a chance. Hell, the eggs probably barely stand a chance, but the fry definitely don't stand a chance. Yeah, dude, now's your time to buy. Excuse me. All right, let's move on to the next tank. Actually, you know what? Let's first get that shrimp trap out of there and dump it into this tank. And we'll see what kind of haul we get. All right, first thing we need to do is get a bunch of snails off the outside. It's not too many, but I'm going to throw them in the pond. The koi will eat them, and if they don't, the snails will just help keep the pond clean. All right, yeah, we definitely got some shrimp in there, so let's do this. And there's still a couple left in there, but it's mostly just snails. One more. Are you still alive or are you dead? All right, now we'll get the rest of those snails out of there and we'll throw them into the pond. All right. Shrimp trap emptied. I think I'll wait maybe Sunday night. If we do a live stream Sunday night, we'll do another batch. But in the meantime, yeah, it's not like I've depleted the population at all. I think we'll be just fine if we do another batch on Sunday. But that's plenty of snails in there. I mean, shrimp in there for now. So the Great Wizard will definitely have plenty to hunt and snack on. I've already noticed since I put a batch in there last week that her belly's plumping out and getting nice and round. She was fat, and then she ran out of shrimp in the tank. There was like 100 shrimp in there at one point, and over time they diminished down to a few. And she went from being plump all the time to just looking, healthy, like she's growing. I feed her well enough, but she wasn't getting all that sweet shrimp every night. And so now she's starting to look plump again because I've restocked the tank. So that's the idea. I keep the shrimp tank going, which is a cool tank in its own right. And when it starts to get overpopulated, I just catch a bunch of them out of there and we put them in that tank, which they also look awesome in, but they slowly get eaten out of. It's not like they get, chowed through in a day or two. It'll be a month before I really need to worry about restocking it. And so that gives the shrimp time plenty of time to recover, and rebuild its population before I get in there and start pulling a bunch out again. I wish I could find something that loved to eat the green hair algae. Scholars, hello. Yeah, I like the different eels. The fire track eel and the peacock eel are both awesome, but I've never had one of those either. Just never really had the tank set up for it. But I've always thought that they would be neat fish to have. I've always liked any fish that's sort of the oddball, not one you see every day, something that you can't find at PetSmart, or one of the big fish stores. Although you can usually find like fire track eels at most big fish stores. Maybe not the peacocks, but the fire tracks are pretty common. I think PetSmart even sold them at one time. So that's the angelfish I was talking about. And the glass is a little boogered up. But see, even zoomed in that tight, you can't really see all the detail. But that's a hybrid. It's a lace zebra. Just look at its dorsal fin and look at its tail fin. Look at all the markings that are in there. And then the whole fish is covered in little spots and little squiggly stripes and stuff. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Got a little WrestleMania going on down here. Zoom. That Raphael's about 10 inches long, maybe 9.5 inches long. It's tough to get a decent measurement on the fish unless you physically catch them and pull them out of the tank. But I try to lay a tape measure in the front, and if they lay in front of the glass and kind of stretch out a little bit, I get a rough estimate. Let's see. Yeah, I don't even know if I might still have it in the other room. I had a big old gallon jug of the Excel when I first got into the fish keeping. I tried using the Excel and doing the overdosing with it and seeing if I could get rid of my algae, and it never really worked, but I also never really stuck with it. Um, and then over time, I began to realize that having algae in your tank wasn't a bad thing, despite what so many people seem to, claim. And I made my peace with algae. The only time I have issues with algae, though, is when I get the hair algae in a tank and it just gets out of control. And I've often found that if I ignore it long enough, it'll go away on its own. I don't know how it goes away on its own exactly, but it seems to if I leave it alone. Although I got to say, the tank in my office, I've been leaving that alone for a long time, and it's still a green monster full of hair algae. And I've got some nasty hair algae growing in the 29 that I never had in there before because the lighting was so low. But now that I got the lighting turned up, I got the hair algae growing in there and it's getting on my nerves. All right, everybody, I'm just loading up on nicotine here for a minute, and then we'll move on to the 29. That discus is absolutely gorgeous, though. I love it. All right, let me get you zoomed out. And then we will have a quick look at the 29. We don't need to spend much time looking at this. I got one angelfish. I've got one red-blue Colombian tetra. And then on the bottom, I have several loaches and a clown pleco. So if you look on the bottom, you're more likely to see activity than in the tank. Again, I do have the angelfish in there. This angelfish is one of the ones that I got from PetSmart just as an assorted angel. You can see the hair algae I was talking about, all this shit growing right here. That's all stringy hair algae. So I've been pulling it out little by little. So once the vibrobites get down to the bottom and the flavor gets in the water a little bit more, you'll start to see the loaches make an appearance on the bottom. And that striped Raphael you were just looking at is probably my oldest living fish, but the loaches, if you see them make an appearance, they're not much newer than the Raphael. They're maybe a couple of months newer. So those loaches are also amongst my oldest fish, and they're probably 12 or 13 now. I've had them in there that long. They've been in that 29 their whole lives. So there's one poking around the bottom. There's 5 of them in there. And if you look, there's a couple of cichlid stones. You can see one really right there. You see the opening in the front of it. There's one of the loaches right there. A lot of times the loaches or the little clown pleco will get inside that cichlid stone. So a lot of times you'll see a little snout or a little face sticking out of the hole. And somewhere in there, I got another cichlid stone. There are 2 of them. There it is. There's the other one. And there might even be somebody in there right now. So I have 5 of those loaches. Those are striated bodia. Actually, they're not technically loaches, but they're loaches. But they're not striped loaches. They're not zebra loaches. They are striated bodia. If you look up a zebra loach, it's different than those. Those are striated bodia. If you look that up, you'll see what's in the tank. Heavyweight, how are you? And a happy Friday to you. What are the keys to my success? Well, that's a good question. I don't really know that there's anything specific I did to make me successful per se. On a brief, I'll get back to the discus in a second if you remind me in case I forget. But that's the angelfish I was talking about. I think that's an absolutely gorgeous angelfish. And that's another one that if you see it in person, you'll realize that all that sort of silvery sheen you can see up around its head in the right light, that turns like an iridescent blue, and it's got blue in its fins. It's a really pretty fish. It's got all those smoky markings on it and everything. And that was a assorted angelfish. I got it at PetSmart for $6 or whatever. That's not any kind of special. I call it my smoky angelfish just because it looks, the way it looks. But it's an assorted angelfish from PetSmart, and it's one of the prettiest angelfish in my opinion. I just absolutely love the paint job on that thing. But as far as my discus go, I think that there's two key factors to me being successful with keeping the discus. The first factor is that discus themselves have changed mightily over the years. I started talking about this a little bit the other night. Cultural momentum is what I was talking about, and how difficult it is to shift cultural momentum, and that's whether it's the culture at large or the culture within a certain community. And think about it like this: if you got into fish keeping in the 90s, what were you hearing? You were hearing from the long time fish keepers, the one who, that's who you listen to. You listen to the people that have been doing this for 15 years, not the people that started last month along with you. And what the old timers were saying was the stuff they learned back in the 80s. And so that's what you learn in the 90s. And so in the 2000s, when somebody comes along and they're new, what do? You pass on what you've learned, which is shit from the 70s. But we're now into the 2000s and we're still passing along knowledge from the 70s. And if you try to say, hey guys, things have changed, it's not like that anymore, everybody throws rocks at you and chases you with pitchforks and torches. It's not the 1970s anymore. Discus are not like they used to be. They are as difficult to keep as angelfish, in my opinion. So the other factor to my success is the fact that I'm a competent fish keeper. You don't have to be amazing. You don't have to be a fish keeper extraordinaire or anything like that. If you just have to be a competent fish keeper, if you can keep angelfish and you're comfortable with that, then you should have no problem keeping discus. I don't treat my discus any differently than I treat any of my other fish. I don't do special water changes. They don't get special food. I don't do special temperatures for them. There's no, special tank configuration. I put them in a very natural environment. I put them in community environments with other fish, which is how they live in the wild. They don't live in sterile environments with no, like I've heard people say you can't keep substrate with discus because bacteria will grow, and shut the fuck up. Of course, you can keep substrate with discus. Even wild discus swim around and root around in the muddy bottoms of rivers and shit. So the idea that you can't have substrate with discus is just ridiculous. You can't have plants with discus. You can't have other fish with discus. All the stuff about all the water changes you have to do. You don't. You just don't. Just to keep discus, you just keep them like fish because they're not some magic fairy snowflake. They're fish, just like any other fish. So if you're competent at keeping fish, discus are just a different fish to keep than angelfish or gouramis or what have you. And that's what it really boils down to is I'm a competent fish keeper, and discus simply aren't the way they used to be 25 years ago. But that kind of information is still getting passed on because of cultural momentum. All right, let me get caught up on some comments here. Yeah, that's about my system set up there, Art. Nature is messy indeed. Biology in particular. Yeah, I definitely, unbeknownst to me, but there is a danielhiteshew method of keeping fish. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. All right, we're going to move on to the next tank. We'll get back to the Great Wizard's tank. We'll end up on that tank because he's my coolest fish. I got a light burned out in my shrimp tank down there, so I'm going to have to do something about that. But I can't remember what I was researching into. I say researching. I was just reading different articles and science papers, peer-reviewed papers and stuff. And I think I was reading about denitrifying your aquarium. It's, I've been on that quest for a decade and a half now. The mythological denitrification and whatnot. So whatever I was looking for, I was rooting around, and I came across this article in some fish magazine. Now, before I go further, I want to point out that this is the age of the internet. I could start my own fish magazine if I wanted. So I have no idea if this is like some legit national publication kind of fish magazine, or it's some dude in his basement that self-publishes some kind of magazine or something once a month. I don't know. But it was some sort of fish magazine. And so I started reading this article in it, and it was talking about different methods of maintaining fish and maintaining aquariums and that sort of thing. And so I got down to the meat of the article, and it broke down the different methods. And the first method was the Wallstad method, and they talked about Diana Wallstad and, discussed her methodology and so on and so forth. And then I had a chuckle because the next one, as I scrolled down, was the Father Fish method. And I thought, he's got a method? And, okay. And so I read the Father Fish method. And I thought, man, they put Father Fish on the same page as Diana Wallstad. Man, that's impressive. And I scrolled down, and to my utter shock, the bottom was a photograph of me, and it was the danielhiteshew method. And it didn't get everything exactly right, but it was close enough that I didn't have any complaints about it necessarily. It's not how I would have put it. But there was the danielhiteshew method, and it broke down my aquariums and all that kind of stuff. So I was on the same fucking page as Diana Wallstad. I don't give a shit about being on the same page as Father Fish. But I was on the same page in some magazine. Like, my method was being compared. And at that point, I didn't even know I had a method. But it really did get me thinking. And when I thought about it, I looked at all my tanks, and I really have settled into this routine. I can set a tank up without thinking about it. And that's because I have a methodology to it. There's certain things I do. There's certain ways I set it up with water flow and air stones and plantings and circulation. And that's just my method. So I really do have a method. And, it's actually official, as Ark just demonstrated. If you actually look up the danielhiteshew method of keeping fish, you'll get an answer. So I always find that kind of funny. I'd like to say I feel like I'm experiencing imposter syndrome, but I really don't. I've never been one for false modesty. I'm certainly no expert at keeping fish, but I don't pretend I'm a fucking novice either. I know I've got experience and knowledge at this point, but I still found it interesting that I was, listed on a page as my method of keeping fish. It's like, I wish somebody told me I had a method. I did not know that. But apparently I do. And you may notice in this tank, there is a really old looking, well, it's all the way down the other end of the tank, so I don't know if we're going to see it or not, but there's a really old turquoise rainbow fish in here. And that was the other fish I got when I rescued that angelfish recently. I also agreed to take that very old rainbow fish because I have a very old rainbow fish and I'm waiting to die so I can put new rainbow fish in here. And that other rainbow fish doesn't look half as good as this one. So I'm assuming that new one's going to be gone before this one even is. So no harm there. I am a little bummed that my 55 now has an angelfish in it for God knows how long before I'm going to have room to put something else in there. But I didn't want to see the dude's fish. Like, he didn't have a home for it. He was like out of options. He'd gone around to all the fish stores and the local Pet Smart or Petco. I think the local Petco took most of his fish. But they said they couldn't take the rainbow and they couldn't take the angelfish because they just didn't have room for them. And so I was basically his last resort. And I said, yeah, I'll fucking take them. I'm usually a sucker for that kind of stuff. So you can kind of see, there he is. There's the turquoise rainbow fish. So this fish looks like it needs a walker. I mean, it's old. He said it's about 10 years old. And rainbow fish are, live 5 to 7. So this one, the last of my albino rainbow fish, that bright yellow one, she's got to be at least 9 now, maybe 8 or 9 minimum. This tank's been set up for 11 years, and I didn't put her in it immediately, but not too long after I set this tank up, I put that School of Rainbows in here. So she might be pushing 10 at this point. I don't know. I lose track of the decades at this point. When you're my age, time goes by like a fucking roaring river. All right, let me see. Get caught up on some comments. Well, Bob went to my first thought is, what is your pH there, heavyweight? Steve, making the money. I thought about you all day today. We had such a good time. Me and Kane went out on gunpowder. We went out to Bunker Hill, and we paddled way up there. We went all the way up to where you and I did that time. Remember, we were talking about it last time we went out, that spot where you paddled all the way up to the tree, and then we turned around because we couldn't go any further. We went up there today, and man, it was a blast. We had such a good time. We spent time just like playing in the current. I got a quick video to show you at some point. Kane had never really experienced like moving water before. He always goes out on the Monocacy, which is just a slow moving river. And so it took, he was a little caught off guard by how fast the water was moving when we got out there. Because when you put it in Bunker Hill, you immediately have to go up a really small, I'll call it a waterfall. The water comes over like a ledge and it sort of creates a hydraulic, and you got to go up and over that. And then through rapids, not rough rapids, but choppy, ripply, wavy, fast moving water. You got to paddle up through that before you get your first place to like pull over and take a rest. And I don't think he was expecting that kind of water movement. He pointed out later that the slowest moving stuff that we paddled through today was moving like 3 times faster than the fastest moving stuff out on the Monocacy. But man, he took to it like a duck to water. By the time we got out of there, he was out in the middle in the current and spinning around and sitting on waves. And we had a good time today. It was fun. 40 months. Good grief. You're getting old, Shamu. So heavyweight, I don't know if you're checking your pH while I asked, but if you know what your pH is around 8. Yeah, there's your problem right there. Yeah, I haven't been out on the Monocacy in a long time. I've never been on a kayak on it, but I have walked in the Monocacy before and fished it. If I remember the Monocacy correctly, it reminds me more of the slower, more sluggish parts of the Patapsco. The Gunpowder is a brisk little river, though. And especially today, the water was up so high. There was 2 spots we had to get out and walk because the current was just too much. We couldn't paddle up through it. But the last time Steve and I were out there were several spots we had to get out and walk, not because the current was too fast, but because it was just so shallow. We were like hitting the bottom and our paddles were hitting rocks, and it was just easier to walk up through it. And when we came down, we were able to get all the way down without getting out, but we were definitely like scooching over rocks and dragging on the bottom and stuff. Today, like the shallow parts were like a foot deep. You got a full bite on your paddle going upstream, and then coming downstream was like just nonstop, nothing in our way. We had to duck under a few branches and go around a few corners and rocks and stuff. But again, we were like swirling around and catching the eddies and coming back up into the current and looping around. We definitely have to get back out on the kayaks. And his kayak, his is the Lifetime. You can look this up if you want, Steve. I think his is the sit on top version of what you got. I looked at the hull and it looks identical to yours, but his is a sit on top version, and it's the Lifetime Teton. And I think he said he bought it like 3 years ago, so it's not necessarily a current model, but it looked exactly like yours hull shape wise. It was just the sit on top version of it. And like I said, he did great. He took to it like he'd been out on the water, his whole life. We found some amazing driftwood for his tank. I got some cool video and pictures. We saw some kind of weird waterfowl. He's going to try to identify it. We thought they were ducks, but they weren't mallards. It was a family. And we thought they were wood ducks at a distance, but he kept saying they didn't look like ducks. And when they got closer, we could see that they were shaped like ducks, but they didn't have the flat duck bill. They had like a pointy waterfowl type bill. It was like really pointy and had a sharp hook on the end for catching fish. And the babies kept diving underwater and coming back up. And they had bright yellow feet and like light brown feathers with white markings on them. So I have no idea what they were, but we watched a little family of them float past us and dip in and out of the water. So that was pretty cool. Well, the problem, Heavyweight, with your pH being 8, and I am going to scrape my memory here. Let me point the camera at me while I'm explaining this so that I can use my hands to show you what I'm talking about, because I don't have graphics I can put up on the screen, and it'll be easier than trying to explain it. So the reason the pH is the problem with your plants, it's not hard water. A lot of people say hard water, you can't grow plants in hard water, and you can very much grow plants in hard water. Typically, however, hard water also has a high pH. The pH is not associated with the general hardness. It's associated with the carbonate hardness. So you can have really hard water from a general hardness point of view, but still do fine with your plants as long as your pH is down. So if you were to look at all the trace minerals and nutrients and stuff that your plant needs, the calcium and molybdenum and zinc and magnesium and all that stuff that's in your tank, if you were to put all them out, you got your zinc and your magnesium and your molybdenum, and now you look at pH, there's a window of where those minerals are soluble in the water. And each mineral has its own window. Some are really wide, some are really narrow. But the 6.5 to 7.5 is about where you want to be that gets all of them. As soon as you go outside that, especially above 7.8, you start blocking out calcium. And it's simply because the calcium just falls out of solubility. Your plants can't absorb it. It does not matter how much calcium's in your water. If your pH is above 7.8, your plants can't absorb the calcium. And calcium is critical in the way plants build their structure. So all the cellular structure of the leaves is dependent upon calcium. And if you block those calcium channels and give it a calcium deficiency, the leaves melt. The way you see the leaves just turn all mushy and sort of dissolve and fade away. That's usually because the calcium is deficient, or calcium channels are simply being blocked by excessive pH. So if you can get your pH below 7.8, your plants will probably do better. You're getting the new growth because the plants start out, using the energy that's stored in the roots to generate the new growth. But as it gets bigger, the toll gets taken over time as those calcium channels are struggling. And I could be wrong about the exact pH. Maybe it's 8.1 or something. But if your pH is at 8, you generally can't grow plants, or very few plants will grow in a pH above 7.8 is where I kind of consider the upper limit. You begin blocking out different minerals and stuff at 7.8. On the acidic side, you can go all the way down to about mid to upper 5s before you really start blocking anything out. Once you go below 5.5, you actually start shutting down your nitrogen cycle. It doesn't matter as much because in water that acidic, the ammonia is not harmful, but you can't even have a good functional nitrogen cycle once you start getting into really acidic water. But the sweet spot for plants is between 6 and 7.3 is about where you want to sit ideally. If you go up to 7.5, it ain't going to be the end of the world. But 7.8, and you're beginning to really struggle with keeping even easy to grow plants alive, will struggle in pH above 7.8. So there, I think that's what your problem most likely is. All right. Let me, we'll get the camera set up on the Great Wizard's tank. Well, different plants have different needs. And again, some plants do better in higher pH, and other plants, you know, struggle when you get up to 7.5. You know, every plant is different. Some prefer more acidic water, some can tolerate harder water or, you know, higher pHs. So the crypt could be like that. I know I've got crypt that grows like weeds. Of course, I have soft, neutral water. But my crypt grows like fucking, yeah, like I don't even have weeds in my yard that grow as fast as that stuff does, I swear. All right, we're gonna put the, if I can get this camera situated, we're gonna put the sinking blackworm pellets in here. These are 50% protein. So getting back to the discus thing, one of the things that discus keepers will often tell you is that if you really want to grow your discus up big and strong, a lot of them portray it as though in order for them to be healthy. Oh, hang on a minute. Are you still watching, Shamu? Oh, God damn it. He must have seen me point the camera at him. Well, you can't really see anyway, but the shark was just out hovering around in the water there for a minute, but he's gone now. But a lot of discus keepers will tell you that you got to give the discus the beef heart, and beef heart's a really good source of protein, and so on and so forth. And there's a reason they say that, and it's the cultural momentum I spoke of earlier. Beef heart or any other kind of beef, whether it's sirloin or ground beef's a little fattier, but on average, beef heart is the leanest of the beefs. As far as organ meat goes, the heart is mostly muscle. The heart's very low fat when it comes to the organ meat. Obviously, you're not going to feed your discus sirloin. You want to buy inexpensive, you know, organ meat, and so the beef heart was the go-to thing. But beef heart is about 28% protein by volume or by weight. What I just put in there is 50% protein. Well, 45 to 50% is what it says on the package. So those blackworm pellets are a much more significant source of protein than beef heart is. But the reason beef heart still gets talked about as though it's the fucking go-to thing to feed your fish is, once again, you'd be surprised at how much stuff that we do around the world within the fish keeping hobby that originated in Germany. Here in America, we call it carbonate hardness with a K. That's the German spelling. They spell it carbonate with a K. We spell it with a C, but we still say KH when we're talking about it because I don't know the name of the company, but there's some big German company. That's why we have German blue rams. They've imported like more fish than anybody else. They've got people right now around the world scouring, looking for new fish. And so much stuff in the aquarium hobby has resulted around the German fish keeping culture, particularly in the 1970s, it seems. And in the 1970s, the fish culture was just really taking off, and people were bringing in all kind of new stuff, and people were trying to keep these wild caught discus alive. And they needed a good quality protein source for these discus. And at the time, fish food was garbage. People didn't understand fish's nutritional needs. You know, they thought about it as like throwing bread to the goldfish at your local pond or whatever, which please don't do. And so fish food back then was made largely of cornmeal and stuff we would think of as just garbagey sort of fillers. And so these people that kept these discus and really had invested money and effort into these wild caught things that they had to get imported, they wanted to give them a higher quality food. So again, you can't afford to go out and buy steak, but you also don't want to give them like fatty kidneys and liver and shit like that. So beef heart is your solution. Beef heart is a very inexpensive organ meat, and it's also fairly low fat. But for a fish, beef heart is extremely high in saturated fat. Fish have very little saturated fat in their diet. So for as lean as beef heart is to us humans, it's still super, super fatty with saturated fats in it that the fish are eating. So for the fish, it's the equivalent of eating like an extra fatty Big Mac. You know, it's not. I don't think, like, I know a lot of people have grown their fish up eating the beef heart and they're all good and healthy. If I had a child, I wouldn't feed them McDonald's. And if I had discus, I wouldn't feed them beef heart. I do have discus and I don't feed them beef heart. I've never fed them beef heart. And, they might not be as big and glamorous and glorious as other people's discus, but I did that deliberately. I kept the temperature low. And not only did I gave them high quality food, I just didn't give them a lot of it. And if I really wanted, again, I don't have like the big discus complex. I'm not trying to impress anybody with the size of my discus. Discus keepers do. They're insecure or something. I don't know, but they really got to have the biggest discus that they can grow. And if you want to do that, then you can do that with any fish, like max its size out. But you have to run it at a really warm temperature. You have to give it as much food as you can give it while not overfeeding it. When you do that really warm tank with a really high protein diet, it's the proteins that produce the ammonia. So if you're feeding your fish low protein food, like goldfish food, doesn't produce a lot of ammonia, whereas, predatory food for cichlids and stuff, it's a very high protein food. The protein is the nitrogenous compound within that food. So it's the protein that ultimately gets turned into ammonia, which ultimately becomes nitrate. So when you've got discus in 90-degree water and you're cranking fucking, you're literally throwing meat in the tank, you probably have to do more frequent water changes, especially if you're keeping it in a bare glass tank with no substrate. There was reasons all this stuff happened in the 70s. There's reasons people bought, that was probably good advice in the 70s. And then those people told the people in the 80s, and then the 80s told the people in the 90s, and it's 2020 fucking 6, and we're still repeating these same things about how you're supposed to keep discus, and it's just not like that anymore. But, again, just trying to get people to understand that is like pulling fucking teeth. G-Bear. All right, let's get caught up on some comments. Oh, I got good music for you today, Steve. I was actually listening to something that I thought you might appreciate. Care to guess my music tonight? I listened to two bands tonight. One would be a band Steve might listen to, and the other probably not. I have not been beating my shark. Although that sounds like a euphemism for something. I'll leave that one to your imagination. Beyond beef heart. Yeah, I can't believe it's not beef heart. Oh, wow. I remember those old fridges, G-Bear. My grandmother had one of them, had the big physical latch on it. Those refrigerators are the reason to this day in most places it's illegal for you to put a refrigerator out or dispose of a refrigerator without taking the door off of it first. Back in the day, the door handles latched. It was a mechanical latch that closed the door. and people would just throw their, in cities, there'd often be like a vacant lot. It was kind of like the neighborhood dump, and everybody put their shit in that one vacant lot. And a lot of times old refrigerators would end up in there. Kids would wind up playing hide and seek or making a spaceship or a fort, and the door would slam shut. And 6 months later, somebody would find the remains of this child, that got sealed into a freezer or something. And so they passed a law saying if you get rid of your freezer or refrigerator, you have to remove the door. And then they switched over to the magnetic closures that you can just push open from the inside if you ever got stuck inside. But they never changed the law. It's still pretty much in most places. I don't know if it's ever enforced. But those old refrigerators were killers. They really were. But I don't know about the blackworms breeding in there. My grandmother had a lot of government cheese and generic food, but never any blackworms. Oh, yeah. Keeping the 70s alive. Not Soundgarden. Why would I listen to Soundgarden? Come on. I listen to good quality stuff. Well, I'll tell you how I got to it because it's not what I would typically listen to. There's a channel I watch on YouTube occasionally. It's a woman who's an opera singer. And where did he go? I swear he was right in the middle of that screen just a second ago, and now he's gone. Where the fuck did he just go? Damn you, fish. He is a great wizard. So I'm listening to this. The channel's called The Charismatic Voice if you want to check her out. She's really fucking weird. And like not necessarily in a bad way. I don't mind weird, but she's weird. It's just she's a strange cat. And she always has the weirdest like interpretations of songs. And so like not necessarily interpretations of them, but like I don't know, it's hard to explain, but when you listen to her talking about a song, you're just thinking like, what fucking planet do you come from, lady? For example, I was listening to she was listening to Hey Joe from Jimi Hendrix. And if you don't know about Hey Joe, if you're not familiar with the song, it's an old song. It's like from the 20s or something, and Jimi Hendrix did a remake of it. It's an old blues song. It's about a guy. It's hey Joe, where are you going with that gun in your hand? I'm going down to shoot my old lady. I caught her messing around with another man. And it sings about how he goes to jail for killing this guy. And the whole time she's reviewing the song, she keeps stopping the song and reiterating how bad domestic violence is and murder, and how she doesn't condone murder. And like she like, it's a fucking song, lady. Like nobody thinks Jimi Hendrix is telling us to go do this shit. Like we know nobody thinks murder's okay because of this song. Like what the fuck is wrong with you? And like I finally had to stop watching it, as I usually do with her videos, because at some point I'm just pulling my hair out. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And that happened the other night. I was listening to her. She was listening to War Pigs. Alan, how are you? She was listening to War Pigs by Black Sabbath. Classic fucking song. It's like the quintessential anti-war song. It's called War Pigs. So the whole time she's listening to it, she keeps, for one thing, she's watching the video. And I don't know if it was like the official video that Black Sabbath put out, or it was just, I've seen people do these reviews and then they're watching just some random video bullshit that was, some YouTuber slapped together. It's nothing official. So why she was reacting to the video more than the song, I don't know. But she keeps talking about like, oh, this is disturbing, and like, oh, they, hear the way they shifted key right there. That really is unsettling. And I'm like, the song's called War Pigs, lady. And I must have said that in 5 to 8 minutes that I watched of it. I must have said, like, it's called War Pigs. Like she kept talking about how it's disturbing, and they keep talking about violence, and like, yeah, it's called War Pigs. What did you fucking think it was going to be about? And then the thing that broke me was she said, this song seems to be really hard on politicians. Yeah, it's called War Pigs. Who do you think the fucking War Pigs are? Who do you think this song is about? Like she's, God, watching her put this shit together and figure this stuff out in real time is just, oh God, she drives me crazy. So anyway, from there, I was like, I can't watch this anymore. But the next one in my suggestions was her reviewing Crazy Train. And I was like, oh, fucking Crazy Train. And all I could think about from that point on was the Randy Rhoads tribute album. And so tonight I listened to Randy Rhoads Tribute by Ozzy Osbourne. I listened to the live version of it. And oh, it's so good. It just took me right back to high school. That came out when I was in high school. And God, I listened to Tribute so many times when I was in high school. So that was fun. I listened to Ozzy. And then I watched another reaction video of some other dude that I haven't seen. And artists, I mean, in general, artists are just strange people. So, not surprising. This guy was kind of a strange cat, too. But he was a classical composer. And I watched this man's mind get blown as he discovered Primus. He'd never heard of Primus before. So he said he had looked up Les Claypool. He watched some interviews with Les Claypool. He listened to his philosophy about music. And he said, I love this guy. He sounds really interesting. I can't wait to hear what he does musically. And it just, his jaw, he was slack jawed. He kept trying to figure out what he was doing. He was using the piano to try to do what he was doing. Like, I can't figure out what he's doing here. And he just never heard anything like that before. And I was like, fuck yeah, Primus. I haven't listened to Primus in a while. So that was my other band that I listened to tonight. I listened to Sailing the Seas of Cheese, which in my opinion is the best Primus album. Oh, let's see. I like the Deftones. Now, I don't think anybody thinks of Roger Waters as a Nazi. They probably think of him as a commie, which is fine. But I don't think anybody thinks of Roger Waters as a Nazi. But yeah, he definitely gets shit for doing what he's always done. Cheese Savage, how are you? Welcome aboard. I don't think I've seen you before, but I possibly could have. I have a terrible memory. What did you used to sing, Shamu? War Pigs? Oh, Crazy Train? Yeah, Tribute is fucking awesome. And of course, I listened to it with my headphones on, and oh god, it was just so good. Bogue County and a Big Country. I haven't listened to Big Country in a long time either. Yeah, I like Big Country. I've never been much of a Green Day fan. I bought Dookie when it first came out because it was recommended to me. I'm not saying Roger Waters is a commie. I'm just saying he gets called a commie. Maybe you've heard him get called a Nazi. I've never heard him called a Nazi. I hear people call him a lefty liberal commie, whatever, all the time. Which again, like I say, is fine. I don't mind him being called that. I don't think that's a bad thing. Weezer, that's a good band. Weezer is a really underrated band. What's the band my wife always used to like? Although I can't remember, wouldn't say they're underrated. I can't think of the damn name of them now. But that was another good band I haven't listened to in a while. Reminds me of Weezer. Oh God, it's Tom. Oh, this is going to drive me crazy. We all know this band. They're popular. I can even picture the guy. I can't think of his name or the band, and I can't think of a name of one of the songs. I hate when I have these brain farts. Yeah, Tom Petty's good too. I was actually just thinking about Tom Petty the other day. I think Tom Petty is probably also a really underrated. I don't know everybody loves Tom Petty or they know songs about Tom Petty, but I don't think people like think about Tom Petty. And again, I'm not a huge Tom Petty fan, but when I start thinking about, oh yeah, I do like that song, and I like that song, and you know, before you know it, there's like 18 songs that you're like, oh yeah, I like that song too. But the thing about Tom Petty, there's a lot of bands out there that have stayed popular over the years, like the Rolling Stones. And the Rolling Stones did change their sound a little bit over time, but eventually they just sort of settled into being the Rolling Stones. AC/DC from day one was just, this is what we're going to do. This is what people want. And I respect that. I'm not bashing that at all. They picked the sound, they found it, they liked it, and that's just what they did. And they were really good at it, and they were really successful at it. Good for them. I think that's great. But Tom Petty just stayed relevant. He was always creative. But a lot of times an artist will do something that's different than what they did before, and everybody hates it because they want more of the same. Everybody wants something, you know, everybody wants change as long as everything stays the same. And so artists all the time will get, it's called audience capture. You know, you'll cater to a certain audience to the point where you can't do anything else. Otherwise your audience will just leave you. And Tom Petty never went through that. He always stayed relevant. He always changed the sound as you know, new sounds, new bands would come out and influence music, and he would do new stuff. And he was just always good. He always associated with really, really good musicians. He's just a fucking legend. Like, Tom Petty was amazing. And I don't think he gets put up there as high as he deserves to be, even though everybody loves Tom Petty. Eugene, how are you? Tom McDonald. Oh, I just had it and then it was gone. The song Creep. Who does the song Creep? God, that is going to drive me crazy. Oh, I just had it again and then it vanished. I'm going to have to ask the computer machine. Computer, who sings the song Creep?
Creep is by Radiohead.
Radiohead, Jesus God. Tom fucking what's his name from Radiohead. Yeah, Radiohead is another band that is good. Tom York, thank you. God, that was hurting my brain. My wife was absolutely in love with him for a while. Perry Farrell is another one that she was in love with for a while. She really loved Perry Farrell. Probably still does because he's awesome. That's another good live album. If you enjoy live albums, listen to Kettle Whistle from Jane's Addiction. Fantastic album. I'm not a big live music person, but Kettle Whistle is probably one of my favorite albums, actually. Pink Floyd notwithstanding. You know, pretty much all the Pink Floyd stuff is my favorite albums. But Kettle Whistle is definitely up there with the greats. All right, everybody. I think we're going to wind down for the evening. Don't forget, tune back in on Sunday night, and we'll get that nitrate reactor up and running. Before I go, and I really need to get a new tripod. I'm not rushing out of here necessarily. I'm just giving you guys a look at, me instead of the fish tanks for a while. Does anybody want me to talk about the nitrate reactor, what it does? Excuse me. What it does, how it works, why I'm doing it, what I think I'm going to accomplish by doing it, etc. If you got any questions about that, by all means, let me know. I will be talking about it in time, but as of yet, I don't even have it up and running. And it's going to have to run for quite a while before it's really doing anything. I don't know if it will fully cycle immediately. And by fully cycle, I mean it will develop the bacterial cultures in both the oxygen-rich part and the oxygen-poor part. I may have to wait for the bacterial cultures to build up in the oxygen-rich part to start depleting, it's going to be oxygen rich all the way through at first because there's no cultures living in it at all. And slowly over time, as I slow the water flow down, as the water's moving through it slowly, remember the nitrogen cycle, the converting the ammonia into nitrite uses oxygen out of the water. And so in a normal filter where the water is just cycling through all the time, the oxygen depletion never shows up. But if you've got the water inside of a pipe and that pipe is slowly moving down through biological medium, it's losing oxygen the whole time. And all that stuff that's being converted is stealing oxygen out of the water. So at some point, that water is going to be oxygen poor, and yet it's still going to have all that substrate left to flow through. And so I think initially, I'm going to have to establish a full oxygen, an aerobic bacterial cultures growing in there, an oxygen-rich environment. And then once that's established, it'll start dying off from the far end, because once the water gets depleted, there's going to be a point where, okay, from here down, it's oxygen poor beyond the point where this bacteria can survive. And in that area, I'll probably then have to wait for new bacteria to start growing. So we might have to wait a month for the initial cycle to happen. And once that's up and going, then the water slowing down and everything, although we're going to slow the water down after just a few days of initially running it. All I want to do is get bacteria into the system, and then we're going to slow it down. And that should start setting up the oxygen-rich, oxygen-poor zones. So maybe within 6 weeks, the whole thing will be cycled in, or possibly we're going to have to do it in stages. I really don't know. Maybe we're going to have to get the aerobic cycle cycled in. Then we'll have to burn off the oxygen, and then we can begin building on the anaerobic cycle. Either way, it's going to be a month or 6 weeks before anything's really starting to happen with it. So we're in no hurry to discuss it. But if you do want to talk about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and all that kind of stuff, now be your time to throw the questions out there, and we'll get to them before I leave. All right, let's do a bong hit. I brought my bong in, and I've actually started taking, Steve gave me some really good stuff. It's white confetti, and instead it's really, really dense nuggets. And instead of breaking it into rock-sized chunks and putting it in my bowl, I've been grinding it. I haven't ground up my weed in a long time, but I got all that sitting here. So why don't we spoon some of that? Got my little spoon. Forgot to bring my ashtray in, but that's all right. We can just ash in the pond or ash in the 125 here. So I just take a little spoonful. I find if I do these little baby bird hits, they're less choking and coughing. So I just take a little spoonful like that, put it in my bong hitter, and that's my hit. Whereas when I do it with the chunky nugs, I put what I think is a small piece in there, but it's like putting a little chip of wood in, and it slowly burns away, and I get so much more smoke than I thought I was going to get. This will just burn up nice and quick. I'll get a big fat hit, and then it'll be done. Get some smoky ambiance. Oh, I also have something else to show you today, Steve. I forgot I got this. See, that's what I call a baby bird hit. That's a little teeny tiny hit. But check this out, Steve. I got an accessory for the yak because we're actually about halfway through the dog days. But for as much as everybody thinks the dog days are like the hottest days of the summer, they can be, but they're really like the second half of the dog days and then beyond is when we get the really hot parts of the summer around here, which is August and into the early September. But the dog days are over on, I think it's August 11th this year is the end of the dog days. And we got plenty of hot weather. And the dog days start on July 3rd this year. So we're well into about halfway through the dog days already. And July has lovely weather. well, this year we had some brutal weather, but that's unusual. We usually have a very nice July. So it's weird that like those are considered the hottest days of the year. I think the term came from like the Greeks, and maybe in Greece, July and early August are the worst parts of the year. But around here, they're not. When I was a kid, people used to talk about late August as the dog days, but they're not. It's July 3rd to August 11th or thereabouts. It's a 40-day period every year, from early July to the first week in August or so, is the dog days every year. And everybody acts like it goes all the way up until the end of August. As long as it's really hot out, people call it the dog days, but it's just not. God damn it. Oh, let me see. A lot of shrimps with your tetras, guppies, crushed coral, bubble filter, and biomedia. Well, whether you say media or medium, it would just be different tenses. Media would be a pluralization of medium. So I guess it would depend on how you were talking about it. If I were using it as a noun, saying that the gravel in that tank is the medium that I grow my plants in, but I'm going to use this media to put in the bottom of my tank. So it's probably some distinction like that, although I don't know exactly what it would be. But if I had to guess, I know that putting an A on the end is how you pluralize a word that ends in um, such as aquarium gets pluralized as aquaria. Stadium gets pluralized as stadia, etc. So medium, media, it's probably just the pluralization of it. And so now that we're into the dog days, I wanted a little personal fan for my kayak. I used to have one that I clipped on and I had to plug it into my power bank. And my wife has kind of confiscated that. She clips it onto her desk and uses it as a little desk fan, which is what it was designed for. So I wanted a little personal fan, and I got this. It is really cool. It's adjustable, so you can, set it down on whatever you want. And it's also got a little hanging cord, so you can hang it and point it up at yourself. And it is a wind machine. I get 3 hours of use on setting number 5, but I want to see what setting number 5 looks like. Well, we can do it over here with the light shining. Setting number 1 makes a nice breeze from all the way out here. Setting number 5, if I had hair, my hair will be blowing behind me on setting number 5. Oh God, we got a dead animal somewhere outside and it's rotting and it stinks. And I have the window open over there with the fan on, and it's pulling that smell through. So I'm smelling rotting animal right now, and it's not pleasant. So let's turn it on. We'll turn it up to number 5. And then let's see what it looks like. Fucking affected. Jesus, it's gone. I also have this floor fan on. Let me turn this off. And again, we've got the window open, so air is pulling through. Let's try it this way and see what it looks like. It just blows it right out the fucking room. So definitely have a new accessory for them hot ass days and the muggy ass weather. This will blow enough air I can keep you cool sitting next to me in the other kayak. And again, it's got a neck strap that comes with it, but I didn't hook it on. I showed it to my wife and she's like, oh, great. Another thing to hang around your neck. Oh, and on a final note, I will say, Steve, while I got you still awake, you inspired me the other day. I got to thinking when you told your story about catching your vape device and how your little chain thing broke away. Well, you will notice I put a little breakaway on there because I realized that I've got doubled over 50-pound fishing line. That's braided test. I could probably almost hang from that, believe it or not. And then this is a really strong nylon cord. And then this is all cotton. So if I ever caught this around anything, like the cotton tearing would be what broke it away from my neck. And you got to pull really hard to tear cotton. So this was basically like just waiting to be a disaster if I was paddling and a tree branch caught it or something. And so after hearing what you said, I put a little breakaway device on there. So if it ever does get caught on something, this will just unbend and open. And that's happened twice to me since I've had this on here now. It happened today. I leaned down and it got caught. And when I stood back up, it popped it. If I hadn't, it would have gone, would have just hit my back of my neck as I tried to stand back up. So your little experience definitely taught me a lesson, and it has paid off already. So I now have a safety lanyard on my neck so I don't choke myself. I feel like it's like the breakaway collar you put on cats and dogs. So if they get caught in a bush or something, it doesn't, choke them. All right. And that is a baby bird hit. Look at that. It barely fills the damn thing up. I still have room in my lungs. That's a little puff. Look at that. Oh, I could blow it away with my fan. I love this thing already, and I haven't even really actually used it for what it's meant to be used for. All right, everybody. Well, let me see what we're talking about. I don't know who did the theme to Entourage, Alan. When you say yes and yes, was that about the nitrate reactor or was that something else? No, it's actually not, Bob. I have much higher nitrate in other aquariums. No, I have a nitrate reactor set up on the pond. All right. Eclipse, nice. Oh, these are just these are called ceramic rings. It's biomedia, and they're just usually referred to as ceramic rings. They're pretty good. I prefer them over the bio balls. The bio balls are like the plastic ones, and sometimes they have fins, and sometimes they have little spiky things on them. Either one works, but I prefer the ceramic rings. But for my biofilter, for my nitrate reactor, I filled that with pea gravel for the most part, and the last little section of it is filled with a mixture of crushed coral and oyster shell. And it is poultry grit. So that's crushed coral and oyster shell. So that is basically a bag full of ground up calcium carbonate. And if you buy it for aquarium use, if you go to like a hobby shop or you go to Amazon and you look for crushed coral for your aquarium, you'll pay a significantly more money. But if you look for chicken grit or poultry grit, you get this stuff, and I think this was $5.66 for a 5-pound bag of it, and so I got 2 bags of it. I go through it. I put a couple handfuls in the goldfish pond. We now have it in the nitrate reactor that's on the goldfish pond. I said pond, I meant the goldfish tank right here. I put a couple handfuls in there. So I keep it in the filters, and I put it in tanks. I put enough of it in there that it gives me some buffering capacity. It remineralizes the water. And it also puts some carbonates in the water. Remember, calcium and carbonates are 2 different things. I actually thought of a good analogy for that. Everybody seems to have a difficult time with the calcium carbonate thing. Imagine, if you will, if I took 2 very similar looking rocks and I cut them in the middle and I fashioned them together in such a way that it looked completely seamless, and then I glued those 2 rocks together, but I used a water-soluble glue, but like crazy glue strength. So when you're looking at this thing, for all intents and purposes, it's a single rock. It is just one piece of stone. You're holding it in your hand. You can do whatever you want with it. It's a rock. But if you put it in water, that bond, that water-soluble glue between them dissolves and it falls back into 2 pieces. That's calcium carbonate. When it's in its solid form, it is calcium and carbonate bound together into one rock. And when it dissolves into water, the bonds that hold them together separate, and you get calcium, which gives you your general hardness and has nothing to do with your pH. And then you have carbonates, completely separate, and that's your carbonate hardness and your buffering capacity. And so when we talk about hard water being, high pH and all that stuff, it's only because usually when we have hard water, it's because of calcium carbonate. So we're putting both in the water at the same time. So as the hardness goes up, the carbonates go up. And so if you don't really understand what's going on there, it's easy to associate hard water with high pH because it usually is. You can very easily have a lot of calcium in your water, but not a lot of carbonates. This would give you very hard water, but also very acidic. You can have acidic hard water. You can also have a pH of 9 in very, very soft water. They're completely separate. It's not a scale. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. Calcium and carbonate are 2 different things that through the process of chemistry, when they combine into one as a rock, it's calcium carbonate. But when it dissolves into water, it separates back into 2 different things that do 2 completely different things in your tank. So I hope that makes it a little clearer about why pH and general hardness aren't associated. And again, it can get a little confusing why you have a pH of 7.9, but a general hardness of 2. That's very feasible. You can easily do that. So always keep that in mind when you're considering adjusting your pH and that sort of thing. If you want to raise your pH, you can do that by throwing crushed coral in the tank, but you'll also be making your water harder. So if you have very soft water fish and you want to keep your water soft, you can do other things to raise your pH that don't affect your general hardness. Have you ever heard of wonder shells? They're very common. I'm sure most of you have heard of wonder shells. That's what wonder shells are. Wonder shells are the carbonate without the calcium. So when you put wonder shells in your tank, you're buffering your water without adding anything to the hardness. And so you can keep your soft water while buffering it, and this carbonate slowly dissolves into the water without the calcium. And so you get the pH buffer without affecting your water hardness. So that's how all that works, and hopefully that all makes sense if that explained it to you. Oh, let's see. Morning. No, I think I do know what it is. One of my cats got, well, I won't tell you the story, but one of my cats got a chipmunk the other day, and I'm not sure where it eventually died, but I guarantee you it eventually died. And I think it might have crawled under my porch or something. And that was a few days ago. So that's right on par with where I'd be smelling this smell now. It's definitely not a deer. Very, very familiar with what rotting deer smells like. It's a very unique smell. So this is some other animal out there rotting away, and it stinks. Speaking of dead animal rotting away and stinking, as we were paddling, me and Kane went out kayaking today, and we went out on the Big Falls River, the Gunpowder River, and it's just so gorgeous out there. And you look like you're in the middle of the nowhere. The water's pristine, crystal clear. We're in 2-3 feet of water. You can see every pebble on the bottom. It's the kind of place where if you were maybe not familiar with nature, you might think, oh, this, look at this fresh water, and you leach down. Never drink out of streams. Just don't drink out of streams. I know it looks like you want to commune with nature and drink. Never drink out of streams. So as we're paddling today, we're paddling along, and we come around this bend. And right as I come around the bend, I was just like, oh, God, there's all these flies. Right in the grass on the side of the water floating was this dead beaver. It was all bloated and nasty and stinking and covered in flies. And we like paddled around it. If you had gotten a drink just around the corner from that, you'd have had no idea that was there. And you'd have been drinking water that had that shit floating in it. Never drink out of streams and rivers and stuff like that unless it's an emergency. And even then, if you can boil the water or you have a life straw or something like that, do that. You just never know. There could be a dead moose a fucking quarter mile upstream for all you know. Never drink out of streams and rivers. Okay, nitrate reactor. I can go over that really quick. Chrisselton, how are you? I could be a science teacher. I've had a lot of people ask me to teach over the years and be teachers and whatnot. All right, I'll show you what the reactor looks like. So as we talk about it, you know what I'm talking about. This is the side where the water is going to get pumped in. I spray painted everything black, so it's a little nondescript, but you'll be able to see it well enough. So on the bottom end of this is a little pump. Pumps the water up through this pipe and down into this 2-inch pipe. This 2-inch pipe is filled all the way up to here with ordinary pea gravel. Just ordinary pea gravel. So the pea gravel goes down, fills up this. It expands into a 3-inch pipe. That 3-inch pipe is 2 feet long, and the caps on the end add a little bit. And I made sure I got the gravel all the way up to about here. And then from here to here is that crushed coral I was just showing you. Maybe from about halfway up, from here up to the top of this is the crushed coral. So the water gets pumped in that end. It flows down. It flows through all that gravel, flows up, flows out. And then we have the outflow right there that flows back into the pond. And I've got a valve right here that I can open and close to adjust the flow of water. And we also have a valve, the pumps have the little thing in the flow rate. So I can turn the flow rate all the way down. And then I can almost close this valve. And once it's running properly, we will be seeing water dripping out of that. Maybe at some point in the future, we'll get it up to a trickle, but we're going to start with dripping water. We want the water to move through this pipe very, very slowly and make its way through there. I want that water. I want every drop of water that goes in this end. I want it to be in this pipe for a couple of days before it gets to this end and goes back into the pond. So that's how it's going to function physically. Now, why are we doing that? Well, I'm doing that to see if I can. I've heard about, denitrifying tanks and, deep substrate and lots of plants and all this different stuff. And there are a lot of ways you can make an aquarium either very low nitrate or even nitrate free. That is not denitrification. Having a tank with no nitrate in it is not denitrification. There's a lot of ways you can have zero nitrate. And everybody knows having a nice thick substrate, heavily rooted, lots of plants. But what most people don't realize is plants really aren't taking nitrate out of your tank. The plants will use nitrate if necessary, but what the plants really prefer is ammonia. When they take in nitrate, they have to convert it to ammonia anyway. So ammonia is much more readily available to them. So as the ammonia is being produced in your tank, the plants are pulling the ammonia out of the water. So if there's no ammonia in the water, there's nothing to get turned into nitrate. And so your tank won't have any nitrate in it, but that's not denitrification. Denitrification requires nitrification. You have to have the nitrate in there to begin with to undo the nitrate, to denitrify it. And that's what I want to try to do. I want to try to do the biological chemical process of removing nitrate from the tank, not preventing it or not acquiring it, but removing it. And that's what the nitrate reactor does. That's not what plants do. And that's not what a simple deep substrate does, because there's no mechanism for a deep substrate to do that. That was the problem. I'm sorry about this. I'm hairy and I got this clip on me and it's snagging friggin' hairs on my chest and it's bothering me. Father Fish insisted to me that if I simply put 5 inches of gravel or sand or whatever in my tank and planted it, it would change my fish keeping or whatever. A bunch of horseshit, whatever. It served no purpose whatsoever. And the reason it served no purpose whatsoever is there's no water moving through that deep substrate. If you've got deeply rooted plants, maybe the plants are drawing water, in through their roots, and that slowly pulls water down into the substrate or something like that. I don't know. I don't see the mechanism how you would get legitimate denitrification simply by having a deep bed substrate. You can do it with a deep bed substrate. It's hard to say when you say it a lot of times in a row. You can do it with a deep substrate, but it has to be an active substrate. You have to have an undergravel filter or some similar mechanism to move the water through the gravel. And you have to do it very, very slowly. And that's why I've never wanted to really do this. I know the process. I understand the chemistry of how it all works. But my idea of doing it was setting up a tank with an undergravel filter and all, and I just never wanted to go through all that process to see if I could achieve the denitrification. So a friend of mine accidentally achieved the denitrification with his undergravel filter system in one of his outdoor tubs. And so that got him thinking. And so he built a little nitrate reactor of his own. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I don't have to set up a tank. I can just set up a nitrate reactor on a tank. And so the wheels began turning and I came up with this idea of how to build one, based largely on his design, credit where credit is due, and, modified it to my needs. And so that's what I ended up with. And so the way it is supposed to work, the way denitrification works, is the process of nitrification is taking nitrogenous compounds like ammonia and oxidizing it, adding oxygen to it, and converting it into nitrite, and then oxidizing that, you add oxygen to it, and then it becomes nitrate. It's NO3. So it's a nitrogen with a bunch of oxygen stuck to it. That's how your nitrogen cycle works, and that's the aerobic process. That's the process that requires oxygen from the water. So you have to do that in your tank with oxygen rich water. It's pulling oxygen out of the water and it's sticking it onto this nitrogen compound, the ammonia, and converting it into nitrite. And then it takes another oxygen out of the water and it sticks it on there again and it converts it into nitrate. Then we do a water change and get rid of it. But there's a process by which if you remove the oxygen from the water, or mostly, there's a difference between anoxic and anaerobic, and we're not going to get into splitting hairs about that. You make very oxygen poor water, and now you have a different kind of microbial life. It's archaea and bacteria and microbes and all this stuff, but they're anaerobic. They live in an environment where there's very little oxygen. So whereas the aerobic bacteria gets its energy, gets its oxygen from the water for its food, the anaerobic bacteria gets its oxygen from the food. It pulls the oxygen off of that NO3. So it like deoxidizes it. It turns it back into NO2. And then it pulls that oxygen off. And eventually it converts that nitrate, the NO3. It's used up the oxygen, but it's now released harmless nitrogen gas that's dissolved into the water. And there's a few other gases that get produced in the process. But the main gas that's produced, main waste product, if you will, is nitrogen gas, and it just dissolved into the water, and then it off gases out of the aquarium. So the way it's set up, the idea is as the water goes in, that aerobic process is still happening. We got water coming in that's got nitrate in it, it's got ammonia in it, and it's got oxygen in it. And so as that's being nitrogen cycled and being converted into nitrate, it's pulling oxygen out of that water. And since that water has nowhere to go, there's no way to replenish that oxygen, eventually that water will be oxygen poor. And then it's still got all that pipe to go through in a very oxygen poor zone. And if we can culture those anaerobic bacteria in that anaerobic zone, we should achieve that denitrification process, and the water coming out the other end should have zero nitrate in it. And that's not really going to have a huge impact on the 225 gallon pond, a little dribble of water coming back in. But that's not the point. I'm not trying to denitrify the pond. I'm trying to denitrify some water and just see if I can create a denitrification process. If I get no nitrate coming out of that end, and we've got 80 parts per million or 40 parts per million going in this end, we've achieved denitrification. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to set up a tank that just doesn't have nitrate in it. I don't give a fuck about nitrate. Nitrate ain't doing shit in my tanks. It's not bothering my fish. It ain't hurting nothing. I ain't worried about nitrate. I want to see if I can denitrify water, though, just to see if I can do it. And that's it. That's pretty much the whole process of what we're doing. That's the whole reason we're doing it, etc. So all we got to do is get the thing to not leak. And once we get it actually functioning, we'll just let it cycle in and we'll give it time. And hopefully in a few months, we'll be getting zero nitrate coming out the other end of that reactor. We'll see. Again, on paper, we should. Will it actually function? Maybe. Again, it should, But there's a lot of things I've done in my life that on paper it should, but it didn't because I didn't understand this thing, or there was this one piece of information I didn't have, or whatever. So that's why I do this kind of stuff, to find out if there is a piece of information that I don't have and I'm not getting it to work. I'll look harder and figure out why I'm not getting it to work, and we'll try to get it to work. And so we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's what we're doing with the nitrate reactor. Lava rock is a good biomedia. Well, drinking from a spring is a little different. There are springs you don't want to drink from, but if it's an established spring and you know it's healthy to drink from, I've drank from springs before. They're coming from underground. That's very different than a river or a stream or something like that. Again, you don't know what's upstream. You don't know what kind of dead fish are floating in it, or a dead bear, well, there could be all kind of stuff in there that you don't want to be drinking from just downstream from whatever that is. So never drink out of open, exposed surface bodies of water unless you're dying. Yeah, there's a spring off of, we've talked about it before, Steve. I can't remember the name of it. We went kayaking right near it that one day. And on a hot summer day, man, you go down there and people have the cars lined up down the road. And it's been like that since I was a kid. My dad used to take me out there when we would go to the Howard County landfill. We'd leave the landfill and we'd go up Marriottsville Road, and we'd go up to the spring, and we'd fill up jugs of water, and we would take spring water home. So I've been drinking out of that spring forever, since I was a little kid. And it's been a few years now. I say a few years. It's been 10 years now. But I was driving home one day and I was really, really thirsty. It was back when I was still drinking alcohol, and I was, my alcoholic days, and I was really dehydrated. And I remembered that spring, and I didn't have anything non-alcoholic to drink with me. And so I actually detoured and went up to that spring and I just drank all the water. So a spring is very different than open bodies of water. Don't ever drink out of a river or a stream, again, unless you're dying. And then if you can, boil it first. All right, everybody. Did that explain everything? You guys all good to go, up to date on the nitrate reactor? You all know what we're doing? Any questions about that before I get out of here? I dumped a lot of information, pretty quickly. So if you want me to go over any of that or, clarify or whatever, let me know. Otherwise, we are going to start getting out of here. It's already 10:30. Can't wait to use this out on the kayak. I don't know if we've ever used one, Steve, or if you've ever used it, but if you can afford one and you've got, some space, having a little fan out on the kayak on them hot ass summer days really makes a big difference. And I don't put it up on the top blowing on me. I put it down inside the kayak, either blowing out and up, through my crotch and across me. So it, blows the sweat off me. But more importantly, it pulls all that hot air out of the footwell and cycles in fresh air, and it keeps the whole kayak cooler. And then, of course, you can also put it up in front of you if you're really, just dripping sweat. Having a little fan blowing on you on those muggy ass days is really nice. And this thing's tiny, and it's about 5 times as powerful as the last one I had. The last one I had was a standard, fan, had a little cage around it. It looked almost like a cooling fan for a PC or something, except it had a clip on it. And, on high, I could just about feel it. If I put it out on my dashboard, I could kind of feel it blowing in my face. Again, this thing will blow your cigarette out. It's so powerful. It's like a little damn turbo wind machine. I could use it to blow the grass off of my sidewalk after I mow the lawn. It's pretty awesome. Now, I might use it for 3 hours and it'll blow up or catch on fire or something. I don't know that. I only paid like $16 for it, so I'm not expecting a lot. But it is powerful. Will adding salt reduce your guppy's birth rate? I would think it would increase it if it was going to have any impact at all. Guppies like harder water with higher amounts of dissolved minerals and stuff in there, and putting some sodium in there is not going to make them unhappy. No, I think Will Smith would be wrong. You could try Yoko Ono. I think that would prevent almost anybody from breeding. Captain Beefheart. You can play Captain Beefheart. That'll stop anybody from breeding. Do they make a blue salt? I don't know. We have any plans this weekend, Steve? I haven't even looked at the weather. I don't even know if it's supposed to be nice out or not. But I don't know what your plans are. But I really want to get back out on the river. And when I drove over Mesa Moore on the way home, like as far upstream as I could see, it was just wide open, slow moving for the gunpowder. No visible rapids as far up as I could see. And again, I'll send you the video if you're going to be around for a few minutes after the live stream, or you can watch it tomorrow or whatever. But we were actually playing in the water today rather than just going up and turning around and coming back down, in the current. We actually started experimenting with it. And at the very top, there's this one place where it's not a big standing wave, but it's a standing wave. And then it's got a few smaller standing waves behind it. And we were getting out on that. And you could almost just park on this standing wave and just sit there surfing on it. It was not quite big enough to hold you there. You didn't quite pitch forward enough, but you could just sit there and, just barely working the paddle. And then, of course, my kayak, I'm spinning sideways on it. It was wild, dude. And then, go downstream, come back up. We were crossing back and forth around the channel. And again, Kane had never really been out on fast moving water before. So it took him a minute to adjust to how hard he had to paddle to go upstream and all that. And again, the hull shape is exactly like yours. It's got a little bit of that keel in the front. And so getting used to but once he started getting the feel for it, he picked it up really quickly. And before we were even up to the top, he was cutting up through the fast parts and no issues whatsoever. And by the time we were at the top, he was sitting out on the wave and going backwards down the currents and turning around and going back up. And so I want to do that some more. That was a lot of fun, getting out there and actually playing on the water. I kind of want to find some place that's got some rougher water. Even coming down, we went through the parts with the standing waves in it, and you just went right over it. There was no real buffeting or no up and down undulations. You just sort of, I likened it to like when you go down the stairs in a cardboard box. You just the box is touching enough stairs at any given time that you just slide down it. That's the way going over these waves was. Like the kayak just went from crest to crest, and you just slid right over top of them. You didn't get this rolling sort of experience. So I definitely want to get out into some rougher water with the kayaks. But we had a blast today. It was really nice. Found some really great driftwood, took some pictures of some really cool plants, got out, walked around in the woods a little bit. Good time today. And I've definitely decided if I go, it's either going to be fishing or kayaking. I'm not taking my rod on the kayak anymore. We tried fishing here and there in a couple spots. And like either I'm going to put waders on and go fishing, or I'm going to go out and play on the kayak and have fun. But the fishing rod kept getting in the way. And every time we tried to use it, it wasn't really working that well with the fast moving water. And, so if you want to go kayaking, great. If you want to bring our fishing rods, we can bring them just in case. But again, I don't know what your schedule is this weekend, but if you got some free time, we should definitely try to get together. Yeah, the Susquehanna is definitely a lot more water, but that's also almost a 2-hour drive for me. It's like an hour and 45 minutes, and I don't really want to do that either. Arknoy, thank you. Let's see, who got the gift? Let me see here. check your phone there, Steve. I'm sending you a link to that video. It's only 30 seconds. But I was just sitting there having a puff while Kane was waiting for me to finish smoking a bowl. He's definitely not a smoker like me and you. But while he was waiting for me to finish my bowl, he got out and just started playing in the water. And so I pulled my camera out and I got a little 30-second video showing what I'm talking about. That's the spot I'm talking about. He's kind of sitting perched up on that standing wave. And you can see how easily he's just sitting there, you know, and that was his first day being on fast moving water. And he was already doing shit like that. So I was pretty impressed with how quickly he picked it up. Yeah, I have no idea who got it. Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel, Steve. If I want to go fishing, I'll either put waders on and go, you know, trout fishing and wading, or I'll get into pungo and I'll go out the reservoir or whatever. So anyway, you still haven't answered me about whether we're going to get together or not this weekend. So I'll let you think about that. You can shoot me a text tomorrow or whatever. Let me know what's going on. But I'm definitely with or without you. I'm definitely going back out this weekend because that was fucking fun. I had a good time and I want to do that some more. So that is that. I'll do one final bong hit while you all say goodnight, and then I really am getting out of here this time. Take my little spoonful of weed. You know what? We're going to do 2 spoonfuls of weed in this one. Oh, I got a story to tell you all, too, because I felt like a monster. I suddenly became that guy. I suddenly became the mean old man across the street. So stick around for one more minute, and I'll tell you the story. So we had a big tree branch fall down at the bottom of our driveway a while ago, and I dragged it out of the way, but it was kind of behind my mailbox post, and it was really big and heavy, and I couldn't get it out from behind the post, and I just said fuck it and left it there because who cares? It's just a log on the side of the road behind my mailbox. It's woods right there anyway. So for the longest time, this log's just been sitting there, not bothering anybody. And I went down there the other day, a couple days ago, and I saw what I thought was the county had come by and like put a marker tag on it. It was like the high visibility tape. And there was 2 pieces of tape on it. One was like a square piece of tape that had like a black oval on it, almost looked like an eye. And then the other one was fashioned to the end of it where it was kind of sticking out, and it was hanging off of it. And somebody had folded the tape over and then cut it into like this V shape. It reminded me of the kind of thing you'd put on like a 2x4 sticking out the back of your pickup truck, like a warning flag or something. And so I didn't know what I was looking at, and who would have, like, why is somebody sticking like warning tape on my log behind my mailbox? And so at that point, all I could think was it's the county had come by, and maybe it's, I don't know. But I took the tape off of it, dragged the log out of there. I dragged the log up the street a little ways and then threw it into the woods, like in front of my house where I throw a bunch of crap. And there's a bunch of logs and shit back there. So good riddance. Later that day, I got to thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? That really did look like an eye. And the little fork thing, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, that could have been a tongue. And then it dawned on me, I bet somebody made, you know, it looks like a serpent, and there's the eye, and there's the tongue. And so when I'm explaining this to my wife, she's like, yeah, she said, I saw that the other day. She said, I thought it was cute. I think the kids across the street did it. And she said, I thought it was adorable. They're using their imagination. She says, now when I look at it, it looks like a sea serpent. And I'm just like, oh God, I'm like, I'm the fucking old man across the street that have goddamn kids. Like from their point of view, from their perception, you know, all they know is that they did this cute little thing. And then I went down there and tore the tape off of it and dragged the log out of there. And so now I feel like a fucking asshole. So I talked to my wife, and what we're going to do when we're out running errands tomorrow is we're going to buy some googly eyes, and we're going to get something to make like a real tongue, maybe a dorsal fin or something, and we're gonna put it back, and we're gonna do it up right and really make it look like a sea serpent or whatever, and hopefully they'll enjoy that and have some fun with it. And I won't be that fucking old man across the street. They already know me as the guy that's always in my underwear. They've never seen me with pants on. Well, they have now because I ride my bike a lot and they see me on my bike. And so I do wear pants when I ride my bike into town. But I generally don't when I'm going down to get my mail or take the trash down or whatever. And that's when they usually see me. So I'm already that guy. Now I'm the grumpy old asshole that took their fucking dragon away or whatever. So it's weird how the world works when you don't intend to do something and other people perceive it, in the wrong way. But yeah, we're going to do it upright. We'll put it back and make it look cool for them. All right, so we'd still be looking at Sunday if we were looking at going out, I'm assuming. So, all right, everybody. I definitely wanted to tell that story tonight. I'm sorry I waited so long and already told a bunch of people to go away and good night before I remembered I wanted to say that. So now, for the fifth time, I'm going to actually say good night. And pants off Dandalf. That's a good one. I like that. Pants off Dandalf. All right, everybody. I hope you all had a good time tonight. If you did, more than likely I'll be back Sunday night. Who knows? Steve might even be with me on Sunday night. We will regale you with tales of our kayaking. I know everybody loves that. If you really enjoyed tonight's live stream, you could join a membership for $2.99 a month. I do a members only live stream on Wednesday. There's usually just a handful of us there, just kind of hanging out, shooting the shit for a few hours, Wednesday nights, and that is a members only thing. So $2.99 a month will get you access to that, and it will also get you access to my Discord server, and you can join that community and post pics or whatever, and so on and so forth. You know how Discord works, or perhaps you don't, but you can find out. So Friday and Sunday night is my normal time. Don't always do it, but mostly Friday night, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And I look forward to seeing you guys again on the next one. So I hope you all had a good time. I know I did. And hopefully we'll get that nitrate reactor up and functioning Sunday night, or at least by next Friday. We'll have that thing sealed. Even though I have to cement it, we will have that thing running by next week. So look forward to that. So, all right, everybody. TJ, how are you this evening? Oh, no, I don't live in an HOA area. It was definitely an eyeball and a tongue. It was the kids across the street making it look like a serpent. But my first thought was that it was the county, because they do come down with the tractors and they mow the side of the road, and it was right against my mailbox. And so I thought maybe the mailman, but I didn't even really see how it would have affected the mail truck. And it's been there for a long time. I can't imagine they're suddenly complaining. So again, it was just me getting confused about, seeing that tape on there. But it was clearly, if it was green, I probably would have clicked for me, but it was that high visibility, like fluorescent pink. And that threw me. I thought it was like, I thought it was a marker of some sort, and it just threw me. It didn't click for me later that it was an eye and a tongue. So I'll put it back. We'll do it upright. Well, they've got 11 acres with a stream in their front yard, and they've got a goat pen in the back, and they got a jungle gym and a tree house. So they definitely get outside. They definitely spend a lot of time outside. So, all right, everybody. On that note, I'm going to say thanks again for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm going to go through this routine again. So, all right, everybody, I'll see you on Sunday. Good night.